Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh Bashim Yoshai, Bashim Akakodash, and Tabalanus unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations unto the 144,000. This is Brother Kali back with another lesson. Show the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yoshai. Lord willing, this video be edifying and fulfilling. Right, I'm just indulging in this topic here, as you see by the title. I was asked this question, face to face. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to bring out in a video, right? Because of course I did many videos on before, the second wife topic and whatnot, right? But touching on it from a different angle in a sense, you know, showing you that it was never an issue back then, you know. So our forefather Jacob, you'll also get to find out how he brought forth the 12 tribes of Israel, right? How the 12 tribes of Israel came to be, It was not by just one woman, it was done by four, actually, you know. So it also is an interesting part because a lot of these women who, walk around saying, you know, aside from they don't need a man, is that they want the man to themselves and all these different things. And half of y'all wouldn't even exist if that was the if that was the reality of it, you know. But anyways, Genesis 29 and 1. I'll be reading the NLT, going straight down so you'll get a clearer and better understanding, so I don't have to stop and expound that much, because it's clear, right? I already subheading for the KJV, it says Jacob meets Rachel, right? So going down, it says, then Jacob hurried on, finally arriving in the land of the east. He saw a well in the distance, 3 flocks of sheep and goats lay in an open field beside it, waiting to be watered. But a heavy stone covered the mouth of the well. It was the custom there to wait for all the flocks to arrive before removing the stone and watering the animals. Afterward, the stone would be placed back over the mouth of the well. Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked, "Where are you from, my friends?" We are from Haran," they answered. "Do you know a man there named Laban, the grandson of Noah?" he asked. "Yes, we do," they replied. "Is he doing well?" Jacob asked. "Yes, he's well," they answered. "Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the flock now." Jacob said, "Look, it's still broad daylight, too early to round up the animals. Why don't you water the sheep and goats so they can get back out to the pasture? "We can't water the animals until all the flocks have arrived," they replied. Then the shepherds moved the stone from the mouth of the well and we water all the sheep and goats. Right? It says Jacob was still talking with them when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherd. Because Rachel was his father's Salaki, and Rachel was his cousin, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and because the sheep and goats belonged to his uncle Laban, Jacob went over to the well and moved the stone from its mouth and watered his uncle's flock. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, and he wept aloud. He explained to Rachel that he was her cousin on her father's side, the son of her aunt Rebecca. So Rachel quickly ran and told her father Laban. Right, so this is their first encounter when they first meet, and you can see these relatives, right? So it goes on. Jacob marries Leah and Rachel. It says, as soon as Laban heard that his nephew Jacob had arrived, he ran out to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him home. When Jacob had told him his story, Laban exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me without pay just because we are relatives. Tell me how much your wages be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older was named Leah, and the younger was named Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes, but Rachel had a fine Slovakia. But Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, I'll work for you 7 years if you give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife. Agreed, Laban replied. I'd rather give her to you than to another one, to anyone else. Stay and work with me. So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Finally, the time came for him to marry her. I have fulfilled my agreement, Jacob said to Laban. Now give me my wife so I can sleep with her. So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night, when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob and he slept with her. Right? So you see, he basically got tricked, right? Laban had given Leah a servant, Zilpah, to be her maid. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. What have you done to me? Jacob raged at Laban. I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me? It's not our custom here to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn, Laban replied. But wait until the bridal week is over, then we'll give you Rachel too, provided you promise to work another 7 years for me. So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. A week after Jacob had married Leah, Laban gave him Rachel too. Right? So remember, these is men of the Lord, these are righteous men, they know the thing. And whether they can receive it or not, Isaac was Yahushai, right? And Jacob is actually King David, from Moses to Jacob to King David, and it's up the line again basically. So when you look at it, these men being righteous, they would know better, or not if it was a sin to have more than one wife, right? So it goes on. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her much more than Leah. He then stayed and worked for Laban the additional 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. So Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben. For she said, the Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me. She soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Simeon. For she said, the Lord heard that I was unloved. Salakia. Everybody you saw, boy. Alright, verse 33, it says, she soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Simeon, for she said, the Lord hath heard that I was unloved and has given me another son. Then she became pregnant a third time and gave birth to another son. She named him Levi, for she said, surely this time my husband will feel affection for me, since I have given him 3 sons. Right? So her goal was mainly to please her husband. Right? Because she knew that Jacob preferred Rachel. But at the end of the day, she knew that's her husband. So it goes on in verse 35. It says, once again, Leah became pregnant and gave birth to another son. She named him Judah, for she said, now I will praise the Lord. And then she stopped having children. Right? So she tell herself, well, hey, she have 4 children for him already. Her sister not bringing forth any children, so she good there. So chapter 30 and verse 1 now, it says, when Rachel saw that she wasn't having any children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister. She pleaded with Jacob, give me children or I'll die. Then Jacob became furious with Rachel. Am I God? He asked. He's the one who has kept you from having children. Then Rachel told him, take my maid Bilhah and sleep with her. She will bear children for me, and through her I can have a family too. Right? So you see, she wanted a family as well. So it also shows that, um, the main goal, of our Israelite family is to basically bring forth a family. Because remember, children, especially or mainly should I say, the sons is what carries on the legacy, through their seed, through their lineage, right? So it goes on. So Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife and slept with her. Bilhah became pregnant and presented him with a son. Rachel named him Dan, for she said, the Most High has vindicated me. He has heard my request and given me a son. Then Bilhah became pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son. Rachel named him Naphtali, for she said, I have struggled hard with my sister and I'm winning. Meanwhile, Leah realized that she wasn't that she wasn't getting pregnant anymore. So she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Right? So that is third wife there. Soon Zilpah presented him with his son. Actually, Salakia, that is fourth wife. Bilhah was the third wife. Right? So you see, these women not quarreling about my man he have a next woman, or my sister take my husband and this and that. No, they didn't think like that. A matter of fact, each of them brought another woman into the mix because their mindset wasn't focused on anybody sleeping with these women. Their mindset was to bring forth children because they know that is something that will be pleasing to the husband, right? So their interest was to basically please their husband, right? So it goes on. Zilpah and gave her Jacob as a wife. Here, verse 10. Right? It says, soon Zilpah presented him with his son. Leah named him Gad, for she said, how fortunate am I? Then Zilpah gave Jacob a second son, and Leah named him Asher, for she said, what joy is mine? Now the other women will celebrate with me. One day during the wheat harvest, that would be that on that. Yeah, that would be it on that. But hey, it just shows you that it's 4 women, right? Because there's also the account with King David. Right, in the book of 2 Samuel 12 and 7, it says, and Nathan said to David, thou art the man, thus saith the Lord power of Israel. I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house. Listen carefully. And I gave thee thy master's house, and thy master's wives, plural, into thy bosom, and gave thee the children, and gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would let it keep out there. I'm gonna read it over. I'm gonna take my time and read it. Kinda hard to read when the thing cuts short like this. Right? For me at least. It says, and if it had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Right? So if you wanted more houses, wanted more wives, right, you would have gotten it, right? That's what the prophet Nathan is saying unto David, because remember the sin that David committed, which was basically adultery, right? He sent the man to die and then, basically took his wife. So that's the thing about it. The whole point about it is that, if you wanted more wives, you could have get more. You didn't have to go after another man's wife. That's basically what he was telling him, right? And why would a prophet, Why would a prophet of the Lord tell him something like that if it was blasphemous? You know? Think about it. This been the norm the whole time, and some people might say that is back then, that is not now. Well, alright. Then why would the Lord make a same analogy with it? Matthew 25. Let me see where they start from. I'll actually read from verse 1, right? Right, Matthew 25 and 1, it says, Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom, right? Which in this case is Yahushua, right? It says, and 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with the lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept away. Which going back into today, right? The bridegroom Yahushua, right now Yahushua waiting to get the goat to come, so it's like, while that going on, the 5 foolish, they slumbering or whatever, right? So it goes on. It says, while verse 6, it says, and at midnight there was a cry, behold, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. Right? So, again, as I stated, the bridegroom is Yahushua, and we are the bride. So why would the Lord make an analogy like this if having multiple women in the kingdom is a sin? Or anyway, it's a sin, right? Because remember, the Lord is a man of the Lord, so he wouldn't say something like this. And this in red, say no, it's Yahushua words. So right now, this whole game that females playing, for the most part, is mind games, because because this society basically lift them up. They feel as though they're entitled or they right, into wanting or having one husband, while being the only wife of their husband, and that's false. That's the Babylon mindset that they want to keep you under, right? Let me just bring out one more piece of here and I might close it out. Alright, this is Sirach 26 and 6. It says, but a grief heart and sorrow is a woman that is jealous over another woman, and a scourge of the tongue which communicated with all. Right? So, being jealous over another woman, envying anything that she may have or what she's doing, it's just going to cause grief of heart and sorrow and all these things. And, especially these days, what we call bacchanal, So what would be the point in jealousy or envying another woman, right? Especially if she's your sister wife, because the main thing they will be looking at is another woman having sex with their husband or whatever it is. But as we read in the story of Genesis, their main intentions, they was actually willing to give, his 2 main wives was actually willing to give their husbands another woman just to bring forth children. So they could have cared less who he sleep with, because they know that's the nature of things. It's only the Babylon mindset, that's so well hammered into these women, is that they don't see or want it to change, right? But for you, if you want faithful sisters out there, I hope this lesson, it gets to you, and you feel it in the spirit and understand. May the Lord open your hearts, which goes back to your mind, to understand, what's being brought out here, because the better thing to look at is that, your husband have more help, in things that you need, and you yourself will get help, because I could bet you anything a woman wouldn't feel to cook every day or clean every day and all these different things, right? All on top of going to work, So the more hands you have, the better, right? That's why we shall and Leah both had their own handmaids, because they will always women will always speak about how hard a mother's job is, or women's job is on the whole. Nobody is not disputing that, but it would ultimately be harder because you're trying to do it alone, right? And I'm not saying that to have some women who can do it alone, but it will literally be easier if it is you let go of that Babylon or Babylonian mindset, you know. So I hope this lesson was edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai. Till next time, I say Shalom.